welcome back to Something's Happening Here. This has been quite a week, hasn't it? It's been a prophetic week. It's been a challenging week. I imagine more challenging for some than others, but I'm glad that you are still here. And I pray that we all are a little bit closer to Jesus Christ as a result of this and can make whatever changes are necessary in our lives to orient ourselves to the truth of Christ Jesus as revealed in the pages of the Holy Scriptures. This week we've been talking about the late Pope Benedict XVI, otherwise known as God's Rottweiler, and that is the title of our show this week. We have an action-packed final segment for you. We're going to start with an academic paper that talks about our big reveal yesterday, the identity of the little horn from Daniel 7. So this is written by a man named Dennis Pettibone, in conjunction with the Southern Adventist University, and his paper's title is Martin Luther's View on the Antichrist. I'm just going to read the first few paragraphs here. In the warm ecumenical afterglow of Vatican II, that's the council that happened in the 1960s, Martin Luther's identification of the papacy as the Antichrist of Bible prophecy is often seen as narrow-minded, bigoted, and even unchristian. His view, which until recently was shared by a broad spectrum of conservative evangelical Protestants, is now seen as an embarrassment by some members of churches that retain this interpretation. It is no longer socially acceptable to describe the papacy as the fulfillment of a collection of prophecies regarding a powerful spiritual tyranny. Even the United States Congress has put itself on record regarding this issue. I didn't know this. In 2000, Congress passed a joint resolution condemning Bob Jones University for promoting this belief. The politicians who passed that resolution were probably unaware that they were undermining the historical foundations of Protestantism. But this is the logical inference one can make from this significant observation by Professor Philip Carey of Eastern University. He says, the Reformation wouldn't have happened without the conviction that the Pope was the Antichrist. And then this is a long academic paper. It goes on for like 19 more pages on this. We're not going to read any more. I just wanted to show you that the ideas that we shared yesterday, the interpretation of Daniel 7 and the conclusions we drew regarding the Vatican government of the church are not new. I didn't invent them. These ideas have been around since the 1500s. In fact, the world in which you live right now, the world in which there is a Catholic system and a Protestant system, or a kind of fractured multiple Protestant systems, a world which is not completely dominated by the church in every corner of the globe. This world exists because of Martin Luther's interpretation of Daniel chapter 7. And he wasn't the only one. John Calvin had a similar interpretation. All of the reformers really did. So before you kind of jump down my throat or get upset at me, first and foremost, recognize I am just repeating what Protestant Christians have believed for 500 years almost. Wow. Okay. Now we're going to move in a slightly different direction because the episode this week is about Joseph Ratzinger, better known as Pope Benedict XVI. So, here is a Wikipedia article about this man. And the very first paragraph in the article says the thing that I wanted to use to point out today. Joseph Ratzinger was named by Pope John Paul II on the 25th of November, 1981, as prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, formerly known as the Holy Office, and especially around the 16th century, as the Roman Inquisition. There you go. This article goes on to tell you kind of everything you ever wanted to know about this man, or everything we currently know that we might want to know about this man until his assistant's book comes out later this month, and then we learn a whole lot more. But right there in the beginning, the former pope who just passed away, the man who was the most powerful Catholic on planet Earth for 8 years until he gave up that office, was, prior to his assumption of that office, he was the head of the Inquisition. Now, I know they call it something else now, but it's not a secret. It's not a mystery. Even Wikipedia knows that the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith is just the kind of modern veneer, the new name that sounds more politically correct for the same old institution that was literally hanging people upside down in dungeons and cutting them in half because they had the wrong ideas. So, in case that gives you something to chew on here, the devil never changes. God never changes either, but the devil never changes. He just puts on different clothes. He likes to take on a different appearance every once in a while, but his core is always the same. And so, if we go back to the Revelation 12:7 idea that the war in heaven, and therefore everything that has happened since, is between God and the devil, right? They're the only two spiritual characters that matter. Then everything that exists is either from God or from the devil. Allowed by God, but ultimately from the devil. And if we recognize that cutting people in half upside down in a dungeon is not something God would do, I mean, I just don't see that anywhere from cover to cover in this whole book where God would approve of such a thing, then we have to conclude that those ideas were given to the church by the devil, right? And if it's the exact same institution under a different appearance, just like the devil always changes appearance but never actually changes himself, we see that the spirit of the Inquisition is not far away. In fact, if you recall what we said about Pope Benedict earlier this week, a different article claimed that he was contrary and authoritarian and went to oppose theologians with different ideas and to step on female practitioners of the faith for various reasons. And he seems to have that inquisitional spirit right there in his papacy. Why is that important? I mean, in every institution, there's always the kind of hardliners. There's, always the more difficult, less reasonable people. I'm actually not even convinced that Pope Benedict was one of those people. I mean, he was a hardliner, sure, but if you read his writings, that dude had a lot of thoughts. He was a deep, deep, deep thinker. So I don't really think he was just kind of arbitrarily difficult. I think he had a strong conviction that what he believed was true. Whether it was true or not, I mean, that's up to you to decide, but I think he was acting from conviction. Why am I talking about this today? It's not just to condemn. It's not just for gossip. It's not for any of that. It's because I think even this is prophetic. The leader of the biggest church in the world was in charge of the Inquisition. The current leader of the biggest church in the world, Francis, is a Jesuit. And if you know your history of the Jesuits, that is in and of itself an organization that has a lot of baggage behind it. And so we see, even though Benedict and Francis were like radically different people with totally different ideas, both of them have in their respective backgrounds these institutions of oppression and authoritarianism behind them. So, wow, it's like, even when it takes on a friendly modern veneer like with Francis, you're never very far away from the ideas of the past. Once again, why is that relevant? Join me in Revelation chapter 13, please, and I'll show you exactly why. You see, the devil is not a creator. He can't come up with anything. Only God can do that. What the devil can do is to corrupt and counterfeit the things of God. And so we've seen some of that already. God says, only I can forgive sin. So this system says, nuh-uh, we can forgive sin too. God says, my holy day is the seventh day. This institution said, but we like the first day better. And it's just these little things. Now, you may say, like, who cares? It's just a day of the week. I don't care when you go to church, right? And that may be true for you. But I'm not convinced that it's true for God. God, of course, wants us to worship every day of the week, but he has designated a specific day that he has blessed. It's built right into the fourth commandment. He blessed it in a way that he did not bless any other day. So if the devil is inherently uncreative and all he can do is counterfeit, then we should be able to find counterfeits for every truth about Jesus. Jesus Christ, in his earthly form, ministered for 3.5 years. Now, that's not something that the scripture specifically tells us, but you arrive at that conclusion by kind of counting the number of Passovers in the Gospel of John, and you kind of reckon that out to realize that he was doing what he did for about 3.5 years. And of course, from Daniel chapter 9, which we have not studied in this format, that tells us pretty directly it was 3.5 years. It's half of 7 that he was doing that ministry. So, okay, Jesus had a ministry for 3.5 years. Well, the little horn was in power for a time, times, and half a time, which we determined is literally 1,260 years, but prophetically speaking, remember what time, times, and half a time means? 3.5 years, right? So Jesus Christ has a 3.5 year ministry. Little horn, the devil, has a 3.5 prophetic year ministry. At the end of that ministry, Jesus, the man, died. At the end of the little horn's ministry, it died, right? When Berthier stormed the Vatican and took the Pope prisoner and removed the power of the state from the church. That was the death of that organization in that form. But then a short time later, Jesus Christ rose from the grave in a new, different, and more powerful form. So we should be looking for the corresponding counterfeit resurrection of the little horn in a new, different, and more powerful form. And that's precisely what Revelation 13 shows us. So, in Revelation 13, we start in verse 1, by standing on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. So 10 horns, just like the 10 horns from Daniel chapter 7. Blasphemies, just like the blasphemies of Daniel chapter 7. And now pay attention to the animals that are used to describe the appearance of this beast. Verse 2, now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. Those are the same 3 beasts that we saw in Daniel chapter 7. Lion, bear, leopard. And then in Daniel 7, there was that 4th beast that represented Rome. It was not a real animal, but he's said to be, he's made of iron. He's crushing everything. So often when you see pictures of that, it's often depicted in this like dragon, almost dinosaur-like beast. Okay. Lo and behold, the end of verse 2 here in Revelation 13. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So, lion, bear, leopard, dragon. Daniel 7, Revelation 13. Match, 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 match. These are parallel prophecies. It's almost like Revelation 13 is calling our mind backwards to Daniel 7 on purpose. Saying there's something in Daniel 7 you need to understand. Verse 3. Revelation 13, verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, like as what happened in 1798, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. There's a resurrection coming. In fact, by certain metrics, the resurrection has happened already, because in 1929, I believe it was Mussolini, the Italian fascist dictator, gave the power of the state back to the Catholic Church. And now Vatican City is its own sovereign nation, the smallest such nation on planet Earth. So we are already living in the days of Revelation 13, at least to a small degree. I don't think the church and its other six-headed companions, I don't think they're on the rampage that Revelation 13 warns us about yet. But it's coming. Just like the Daniel 11 counterattack of the king of the north against the king of the south. That's coming. There's something big in our future, and that's the biggest reason why we are here talking to you today, friends, because I want you to be ready for it. I want to be ready for it. I want my family and my friends to be ready for it so that we are not surprised when it comes. So, that brings us to the conclusion of God's Rottweiler. We have used the life, ministry, and death of Joseph Ratzinger, better known as Pope Benedict XVI, as a means by which we can study the prophecies in the Old and New Testaments that surround this organization that we call the Catholic Church, or the Vatican. But ultimately what we're doing is we're seeing things of God that are deeper and more meaningful than an individual man, right? Nothing that we're sharing from the scripture is specifically about Pope Benedict. But instead, everything we're reading from the scripture is broadly about all the popes, all of the people who have participated in this system throughout time, and even all of the believers of every denomination. Because most of us on planet Earth, most of the believers in Jesus Christ, worship on the first day of the week. Probably you do. And I'm not sitting here condemning that. I'm just here pointing out that that's not what it says in the Bible. And ultimately, the concept of Christian Sunday worship comes from one place only, and that's the Catholic Church. So whether you'd identify as a Catholic or not, that system identifies you as a Catholic by proxy if you follow their tradition and teaching of worshiping on the first day of the week. I'm not even making that up. They write that many times in many of their catechisms. There's even this fascinating long form article called, what is it? I think it's even called it's something to the effect of Protestants need to answer as to why they worship on Sunday. and it's a bishop of the Catholic Church going point by point through every scripture that is used to support Sunday worship and saying, that's not what it means. There's no basis in scripture for this. You are worshiping on Sunday because we said so. So if you don't think we have the authority, then you should quit worshiping on Sunday, because we're the only reason that exists. I know this is a lot. It's been like drinking from a fire hose all week long. But if we are truly living in prophetic times, if there is truly something happening here, then I just don't think we have the time to pretend that things are different than what they really are. So let's stop pretending. Let's recognize the only safe place to be is with Jesus Christ. That's it. And even a lot of the institutions that bear his name are not safe places to be. We have to go to the Christ of the Scriptures and follow him into eternity. So I'm going to be praying for you all weekend, I promise, because I know this has been a lot to take in. But I'll give you some encouragement. My father, who is unfortunately dying right now, slowly from dementia and related health issues, he married not one but two Catholic women in the course of his life. And when I taught him these same things, I was really worried that he would reject what I was saying, reject me personally. And instead he didn't, despite his choices in marriage, despite his choice to give his own children to be raised by the Catholic system, when he learned what the scriptures said, he was liberated. He was overjoyed to know the truth. And he didn't divorce my stepmom. I mean, it didn't disrupt his life to that extent, but now it's like he knew the truth, and he was going to live in that truth in love and grace. And I pray that that is your experience as well. We didn't share this for condemnation. We shared it for love and grace and salvation. So may God bless you throughout the weekend. Make sure you're subscribed so we can keep talking to you again next week. That means like the page on Facebook and change your notifications to be alerted when we publish stuff. On YouTube, press the subscribe button and the notification bell. And on tdi.org, talkingdonkeyinternational.org, go to the podcast page and bookmark it. And may God bless you, friends. I love you all in Jesus Christ, and he is coming soon. I believe that in my heart. So let's go to him and be safe, and then be right back here on Monday. God bless you. I'm Steve Hicks, and this is Something's Happening Here.